Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the Nerd Switch podcast. My name is Dylan, and joining me once again today is my good friend and fellow nerd Jeremiah.
Hello again, it's good to be here. Can't believe we're at 16 already.
Oh, I know. It's been so long. Also joining us today is a special guest for the first time, Mr. Zach Larson.
Hello, everybody.
He's an old buddy of ours and an aspiring filmmaker who's going to tie into our topic today. So we're happy to have you and excited to have this discussion here.
Thanks for having me.
But with that, what we're doing today, the episode is going to be titled Vikings, Victory, and Valhalla. You might have picked up through some of the previous episodes that I'm kind of a nerd for a lot of Norse Viking stuff, a Sweetaboo, if you will. But yeah, so today we're just going to dive into stuff that we like from Norse mythology, anything from movies, video games, music, all that good stuff. Jeremiah, I know you're not like as big into it.
I'm definitely not into the music part. I've listened to what you've put on sometimes, and I always do enjoy it. I just don't seek it out as much, for sure.
That's okay.
But I have definitely grown up into it, and I've kind of really gone into that side of things.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll just take this episode to talk about the stuff we like, and then we'll dive into a little talk with Zach about an upcoming project he has, which should be pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. So with that, let's go ahead and flip the switch and dive into our Viking discussion. Viking.
Viking noise.
Rowboats. Swords and shit.
Love swords and shit.
So the first thing I want to ask as we dive into this discussion here is just how did you first get interested in Norse mythology? I'll start with you, Zach.
First time I got into Norse mythology specifically, like it, mythology itself was way back when the first God of War came out on like PS2. It was way back in 2005. But that was Greek mythology, so it wasn't like specifically Norse. But that's when I started paying attention to all the mythology stuff, just here and there on TV, go buy books. You'd see it, but truly like obsessing over it and really getting into all the stories and what it's about, that actually started when God of War 2018 came out. Because then it's a whole new world. It's way different, even though they're same themes. It's way different than the Greek mythology.
Oh yeah, big
it's more. It's much more gritty and dirty and violent, almost less manipulative, but still has that. But anyway, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's really starting to expand a lot now that I'm working on this project and listening to the music that I've done a lot recently with the Northmen coming out. Like things started coming out like a huge landslide of Norse mythology content that I've just been absorbing these last like 5 years or so.
Yeah.
So I'm balls deep in it now, basically.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm actually pretty similar. So for me, I guess it started again with another mythology. So when I was in school and we were going through history and everything, they started talking about, the Greeks and delved into like Sparta and the Spartans and that whole culture. And that's where it started for me, watching movies like 300.
Yep.
And I just went down that rabbit hole of like doing the research into the actual events and found it to be super interesting. And then it wasn't too long from there that it pivoted over to like Viking culture because they're pretty similar, but there's stark differences. And I just always thought it was super interesting. And game-wise, like it didn't start with God of War for me, but it was a little title called For Honor from Ubisoft.
Yes, okay.
Which all my friends make fun of me for still liking, but
Yes, I do. I do.
It's a good game. It's a good game, man.
But yeah, from there, it just kind of kept going. I made a friend playing that game who had a lot of the same interests, and music-wise, it also started with a band that I'll kind of talk about later, but it just kept going from there. And like you said, I think God of War 2018 is a big factor to why we're now seeing a lot more for it, because it just was so successful, which is exciting now that we're seeing like just so much good stuff that we'll dive into.
Absolutely.
But what about you, Jeremiah? You have anything in particular that makes it interesting to you, or?
A kind of bit of the same. I actually got more into Egyptian mythology before I was into Norse.
Okay.
Egyptian mythology, there's just a ton of movies, a ton of video games that brought up Egyptian mythology. Mm-hmm. And I definitely got into Norse mythology through playing games. There's a few movies that I watched that referenced it. But it wasn't until I got older and started seeing it more that I fell down that rabbit hole too. And I honestly just love going through all mythologies.
Yeah.
Especially with starting from Egyptian, going into Norse. I only kind of looked back on Greece with just a few movies. And with God of War 2018, that's when I looked back on his mythology. Right. To learn his character, and then to move on into Norse mythology.
Okay. Yeah, that game had such a big impact. It's crazy. But with that, we can go ahead and pivot and just start to talk about the actual media that we enjoy. So I'll start it out with video games, because I feel like that's probably the broadest topic, at least for me. But
I would agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's the obvious God of War 2018, which is one I'm sure we've all experienced.
Right.
We did get God of War Ragnarok as well not too long ago, which we did a whole episode reviewing it. It made it into our top 10s this year. I don't know if you rank games.
I do.
Okay, was that up there for you, or?
God of War Ragnarok is number 1 for me.
Okay, that was mine as well. Just barely beating out Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Jeremiah, how you like that? God of War?
I like them both. We've had this conversation. It's a part of our 2018 topic of God of War versus Spider-Man. Both are just two fantastic games that deserve that spot.
Yeah, I'm a fanboy for both, so they're basically tied. Okay. But what are some other video games you guys have played that maybe kind of fit that mold?
There is Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Okay.
That I literally searched every nook and cranny of that game to get just about everything. So.
Okay.
Not a huge game. That's kind of,
yes.
It's one of those games like I've mostly kind of like seen of. I've gotten to watch a lot of the story play out, and I haven't played it myself.
Yeah.
Too big of a game for me to rush into.
It's a huge game. Over 100 hours after I was done with it, easily.
Yeah, that one came out in 2020. I'm really bad at beating Assassin's Creed ever since they switched over to the new open world RPG.
Yeah, it's I like the open world, but I'm not too much of a fan of the RPG aspect to it.
Right.
I enjoyed my original 4 games that they did.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean it's so different from other Assassin's Creed games because the combat especially, it's just brutal, and they expect you to just go in and just cutting dudes down rather than sneaking and doing what the Assassin's Creed usually did.
Right.
But basically everything, a lot of Norse mythology was in this game. You even got to see the gods. Thor's hammer was a weapon that you could get at one point, and there's a lot of stuff on this game on just the culture on Vikings, and they had this one dice game that you would go from town to town and do this dice game. I can't remember what it's called, but I got the physical version of it after I played the game just because the dice game was so much fun, and me and my roommate played it.
Kind of harkens back to Gwent from The Witcher.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It's very similar to that, but everybody makes assumptions on Viking culture, on their just savages through and through, which a big part of them are from going town to town slaughtering everybody. But one thing that the game really, really touches base on is that they have wit competitions to where characters would be who is wittiest with their conversation,
right? Who
would give the best line in a conversation going back and forth, whether it's dissing or joking people. They're very intelligent people.
Yeah, they had poetry and everything. Maybe not as big as it was for the Greeks, but
right. They had their own thing, and it wasn't just a competition about the arms and fighting.
Right.
It was a competition about wit and their own humanity themselves, which was cool. It's a really cool aspect that they added to it.
They had the drinking game too, you know, Skull.
Yes, I hated going town to town doing all this.
Yeah, I never beat it. I did get pretty far into it, and I was really enjoying it. I think it's just a case of the game being so long that eventually other stuff started coming out.
Right, it's the same.
I do want to go back and finish it, though, because I was enjoying it.
It's a good game.
So that was 2020. We had God of War Ragnarok in 2022, God of War in 2018. One for me that falls in 2017, which I don't know if either of you have played this one, but it's called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
I have heard of it, but I never got the chance to play it.
Okay.
I've watched it because you told me to look up, and I didn't. It is definitely a pretty interesting game, and I never got to play it, but it looks really good.
Yeah, it's a walking simulator, so you know there's people that automatically will rule it out because of that.
Right.
I love those kind of games that are just very narratively driven, and the game does actually have combat, which is pretty fun. But what it's about, if you read like the IMDb plot description, it's just set in the age of Vikings. A broken Celtic warrior named Senua embarks on a haunting vision quest into Viking hell to fight for the soul of her dead lover.
Ooh.
And it dives really deep into kind of mental illness as well. You learn that Senua's kind of not all there. Maybe not a reliable narrator as to how the events unfold, but the stuff that the game does is just really impressive, and you get to see, you know, parts of Helheim, you know, Hela the giant.
Wow.
I think there's something in there with Fenrir, which is pretty cool, and just the story itself is just really good. So I do really recommend it. I won't like spoil anything, but that's one that I've always looked at.
What platform is that?
Originally it was a PlayStation exclusive, but I think now it's available.
I'm pretty sure it's on Game Pass too on Xbox.
Yeah, they might have actually taken it off of PlayStation now, so it might just be back on Xbox.
Okay.
But really good. Definitely recommend it.
I will definitely check that one out. That sounds awesome.
And then...
This is the game I played tons of hours for.
Okay.
2011 is Skyrim.
Oh, yeah. Who hasn't?
I know.
I almost sold my soul to that game. Let's be honest.
Yeah. That game was just so huge when it came out. Like, I remember, I was pretty, well, not younger at the time, but all my friends, like, at school were still talking about it, and every day you'd show up and be like, well, this is what I did over the weekend. Mm-hmm. This is where I went. And everyone had a different thing going on just because the variants. Right. And, yeah, that game, I think a lot of people hold near and dear. Mm-hmm. Still waiting for Elder Scrolls 6.
It's gonna be good though.
10 plus years later.
I'm waiting for the next release of Skyrim, you know?
Yeah.
What are they gonna do next?
Put it on it.
If they're waiting this long to release it, you know it's gonna be good. So
didn't they put it on Alexa?
Yeah, I think so.
Walk forward.
Walk forward.
Oh man. Jumping back a bit, 2014, like we talked about with For Honor. That's a game that's not like strictly Norse mythology, but it revolved around you picking a faction, either Viking, samurai, or knight, and then it's just an online PvP experience where you go fight.
Yeah, and
really fun.
Brutal. It's a brutal game.
I got real good at it to the point where I was salty. I was like in that salty classification, like you would look at League of Legends players.
Cool.
So yeah, really a lot of time on that one. And then, are there any other main games you guys have?
No, those are the main ones. Because me going 100+ hours in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I don't play all of the games, if that makes sense. If I dive into one game, if I like the game, I'm going to be going through every nook and cranny. Mm-hmm. And that's the same with God of War Ragnarok right now. Like, I know there's other games out, but I'm still deep in that. So.
Okay. And were there any other big ones for you before we kind of dive into the neat minor mentions?
It's mostly just the rest of the minor mentions. I can't think of anything that had like a large storytelling for Viking that I played a lot of.
Okay. So yeah, there are some games that aren't necessarily based on Norse mythology, but they bring in certain elements that I just wanted to mention real quick. One of them being Final Fantasy.
Oh yeah, okay.
I know, Jeremiah, you and me both played Final Fantasy VII. I don't know how familiar you are with Final Fantasy, Zach.
Yeah, I played the remake of the seventh one
Okay.
a while back.
Yeah, what they do is just some of the characters are just based on Norse mythology, mainly the summons. Like you
Right.
have uh, the fire giant. I don't know if they call him exactly Surtur, but he's based on it. Some other
Definitely,
ones.
definitely based on it. Isn't there like a few items or like weapons that are named after some Norse stuff?
Yeah, I think so. And then another one, which Halo, just because of the Mjolnir armor, is what
Right.
it's called. Like they have what it stands for and everything, but I think it's just a cool reference to like Thor's hammer is pretty iconically equivalent to like Master Chief's suit, you know.
Right.
A fun one with Dark Souls 1, there was a boss called Sif who was a giant wolf. So it's a reference to
nice.
Fenrir, but also like what was Sif, like Mother of the Earth or something?
Lady Sif.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a cool
It's
reference.
Thor's wife.
Uh-huh.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. And then Jeremiah, this one's more for you, but with Persona 5.
Persona 5, it actually involves a lot of the Persona games. They all reference the Norse mythology. A lot of the Personas that come in, you have Thor, Odin, Surtur is a Persona that you can summon, and the Persona games are kind of similar to Pokemon, basically. You have these Personas that you summon, and they attack for you.
Okay.
One of the cooler things too is in the fifth one, all of your characters have like their own elemental base, which one of them is a lightning based element, and if you progress enough in the game, you can actually get the Thor's hammer Mjolnir and give it to this character, and he uses that as his weapon.
Okay.
It's like his strongest weapon. They do a ton of different stuff for it. And they mix and match like tons of mythology in this one game.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool.
Yeah, I played 5. It wasn't quite for me. It's a hard sell for me to get into like turn-based combat. But I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I think that pretty much wraps up the games part. So we can shift over to movies, which my list is pretty short. I don't feel like there's been a ton. There's like a lot of older movies that are based on Norse mythology, but I definitely haven't seen the bulk of them.
Right.
So my list is pretty recent, but I think a large one that we have all seen recently is The Northman.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a big one.
And that was directed by Robert Eggers, known for The Lighthouse, and for me, more particularly, The Witch. I love The Witch. The Lighthouse, I wasn't big on, but...
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Appreciate the work and the performances that went into it. But
yeah, it was a little too weird for me,
yeah.
but it is definitely one that I know a lot of people, like, have high praise for.
I'm all for Willem Dafoe's 2-minute monologue.
Oh, yeah?
Where he doesn't blink at all.
You get to see William Dafoe as a merman.
It was bonkers, for sure.
But yeah, that one, The Northman, just recent. I mean, we did our top 10 movies of the year as well, and that one was pretty up there for me as well. I think it was my third or fourth pick. Just really good. I mean, that movie just really accurately dived into a lot of the mythology.
Right.
And it is another one that probably lost some people with its weirdness, you know, the father and son crawling around in the cave.
Right. And a big part of it is that everybody sees a trailer for a Viking film and they're expecting there's going to be a lot of slaughter in this movie. Where this director, if you've seen all the rest of his stuff, it's not about the big action piece or anything like that. The Witch, it's a slow burn, but it is effective when it gets to the end. But the Northman, like, it does dive into some really cool stuff. There is this part combat at the very beginning where it's just a one continuous camera shot through the whole thing, and it's epic. It's wonderful.
Yeah, the Berserker raid.
But then it gets to like the middle, and you're learning about the characters. Not really too much violence is going on. It's more characters. And then it gets to the end, and you dive back into what the the whole conquest is about the violence of the Viking world again.
Right.
But now you have all of this character built, and now your heart is in it, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so great, because it takes the time to put the pieces rather than just give what the bulk of the audience wants, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's where it probably lost some people, because I know expectations going in based on the trailer were following more with that Berserker raid, and people probably had that idea. And, like, admittedly, the first time I watched it, I was thrown a little bit off of my expectations, but it was favorable, because then you see, like, what the movie does with the story, and dealing with, like, the Norse ideals of fate, and how it's unbreakable, and, like, it literally lays out the whole story for you, and it plays out.
Yeah.
And even when you know what's going to happen, it's still, like, incredibly interesting.
Right.
Yeah, just really good. Like, we did, in our top 10, we kind of talked about it, but for me, like, this is the closest a movie's ever been just to, like, being a play on the screen.
I agree.
It is very much based on, like, Hamlet and, you know, good stuff like that, but
For sure.
it's just really solid.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the movie. It was good.
It's loosely based on a true story, right?
Oh, yeah?
I think so.
I think so. I haven't looked, like, too deep into what actually went into it, but...
Well, because if it's about Vikings, it's well over 1,000 years ago,
Yeah.
or it's something close to that, 800 years ago. So even if it is based on the true story, facts and details are going to get shuffled around over the course of several centuries. You
Right.
know.
loosely based on something at some point in time.
Yes, exactly. But that's just something to appreciate, that stories like that humanity did pass around about people, which is something cool to think about in their culture and in Norse mythology, where it all comes from in general, you know.
Okay. The next movie I have is in 2017. Did you guys have anything before that? Or after that, I guess?
Mine's after.
Okay. What about you?
There is a few things, but they're not they're not technically movies. I wanted to talk about the Vikings TV show.
Okay.
And I'll put this in because this was just something that I thought of, but we'll move forward from it quickly. There was one thing that came to my mind the other day. Did you guys ever watch the TV show of the Hulk? Like the one way back then, back in like the 60s or 70s?
No.
Anyway, it's the one where Lou Ferrigno, I think his name is.
That's what
He plays the Hulk, and they had an episode where Thor makes an appearance.
Huh.
And he's big, chunky, has this huge armor, hair, helmet, and he's got the hammer and everything, but it's so bad. I just wanted to throw it in here because it is technically Thor, Norse mythology.
I believe it from a 60s adaptation.
But yeah, what's the 2017 one you were talking about?
So this is a horror movie that's a Netflix exclusive called The Ritual.
Oh my god, I've heard of this.
Yeah.
I didn't get around to seeing it though.
I'm going to pull up the IMDb so that I can sound smarter when I talk about it.
Always looking for ways to sound smarter.
So the plot description on this one, just a group of old college friends reunite for a trip to a forest in Sweden, Northern Europe, but encounter a menacing presence there stalking them.
Oh my.
And it very much calls back kind of like to Blair Witch. Like, it's not found footage by any means, but it is sort of set up similarly. Like, you know, group of friends in the woods, psychologically stuff starts happening until you get to the end where things really ramp up. But, like, not to spoil anything, but it is based on Norse mythology in a really cool way.
Cool.
A way that I won't spoil because I really do recommend it.
That's cool.
Yeah, just I love it. It's like for a Netflix exclusive, like you don't get high expectations, but this is one that would easily be in my like top 10 horror movies.
I'll have to check that one out. That sounds super cool.
Yeah. Really good. You didn't see that one either, right?
No, I've actually seen like parts of it on Netflix. I've just never sat down to fully watch it.
Okay.
It's been on my list for like ever, and I just haven't done it yet.
I recommend it. It's really good. There's some cool scenes, like when they get to the psychological horror, they do some really cool stuff. There's one scene in particular that did kind of give me like the chills or butterflies just with the way they presented it, because it deals with your main character's trauma with an event that happened in the past that kind of affects the group that they're in.
Right.
And so the presence or whatever, like without spoiling anything, like it knows the character's traumas and kind of uses that against them.
Right.
And there's one scene in particular that's just really cool for that.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so that one, and then the last movies I have listed is just the Thor movies from the modern MCU.
Right. Okay.
For better or worse, my opinions kind of changed on them over time. Like Thor 1 is pretty fine. Like it's
okay.
not a great movie, but it's not a bad movie. Thor 2 I still don't remember much of. Ragnarok I used to like a lot more, but I've had a hard time with Marvel as of late.
I could see that angle for sure.
Yeah.
I have come to just an acceptance to where I'm not going to be expecting anything like an Oscar-winning film when going into these movies.
Right.
They're set to be having fun, having good, enjoyable time, and then you leave the theater, and then that's it,
Yeah.
But even though, because my expectations are like set at that level, then I can just enjoy the ride and not be too butthurt about something that is actually kind of stupid.
I get butthurt.
Yeah. But
I definitely can
but
too.
when it comes to Thor and Asgard and everything that they do in the Marvel films, like for the story that they're building, like it's cool to like explore that. They could pull back a lot on the comedic elements so we can actually take some of the characters seriously. But when it comes to like how Norse mythology actually told about these characters or gods or whatever, like it's not even in the same ballpark because the Marvel movies treat them like superheroes, but they weren't. They manipulated people. They killed people. Odin used Midgardians all the time to his benefit. You know, like they weren't heroes. Fair to say. I mean, God of War Ragnarok dove straight into just how brutal and unforgiving Thor is.
Right. And even its depiction of Odin being more like a manipulative dictator than like a praiseworthy god,
Right. So yes, we can appreciate the work that Marvel has done in their own way. Like it's regardless of how you feel about the movies, it's crazy what they've been doing for this long with all of these big, huge projects.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to what we're talking about and like why we love Norse mythology as a whole, Marvel is not the best example.
Yeah. It is still like a really fun depiction, though.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, those movies are, they're there. I like Thor: Love and Thunder. That's the one that kind of broke it for me.
That one, I was like, come on. You could do so much better. But like, here's the thing that grinds my gears so bad about that movie. And it's not even... The original cut was 4 hours long.
Oh, yeah.
And they cut it down to 1 hour and 50 minutes. And I'm just like, are you kidding me?
You could kind of tell with some of the gore stuff.
And the Gore the God Butcher was in it. And there was so much footage and so much rumors coming out about... Like, there was... like a scream in a scene that Christian Bale did as Gore that they literally cut out of the movie because it was going to be too scary. And I'm just like, leave that in.
Yeah.
You stupid.
Do you think they'll do a director's cut at some point for that?
I hope so. Otherwise, that's literally going to be the worst Marvel movie for the rest of the time. You know?
It's definitely up there for me. We did a whole episode. It was like our very first episode, I think. Just if you want to hear us rant about Marvel for like an hour and a half. But yeah,
I have one movie that we can add to the movie list.
Okay,
it's kind of a wholesome movies. How to Train Your Dragon movies.
I forgot about those.
That's actually good picks.
They are good Viking story movies,
Yeah,
and it's like, yes, again, Marvel has their version where it's depicting them as heroes. This is definitely not depicting them as heroes, but this is a Viking village and it's how they see these gods
Right.
and they worship them. They're not really brought up in those movies, but it's also a way for like a younger generation to kind of be introduced to it.
Yeah.
It's can be exposed to full families, and you get dragons thrown into it, which is never a bad thing.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Remind me who made those. Wasn't Pixar, was it?
it was DreamWorks.
DreamWorks.
Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely DreamWorks.
Yeah, I remember liking all those. They're really good. Just family films, fun to watch while still being like perfectly entertaining for an adult. Okay. Was there any other movies we missed, or you guys have?
It's not really movies, but I wanted to jump into
The TV set.
there's a Viking. It's literally just called Vikings.
Yeah.
It premiered on like the History Channel,
Yeah.
and it's now it was on Netflix for a while. Now I think it's on Amazon Prime. I still have to finish it. I haven't finished it, but it's not like the most violent depiction or whatever. It's still pretty violent.
Yeah.
But it really dives into the culture of everything and the brutality of it. And they this is just the fifth episode.
Oh boy.
Fifth episode of the first season. Did we lose it? Or
Oh no, we're good. We're
We're
good.
good?
This
Okay.
is all battery power.
okay, good. That's good news.
Power just went out. Everything's fine.
No, but just the very first season in the fifth episode, they have this thing where they're doing a ritual of to bring favor from the gods or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're passing around like shrooms in little wooden bowls so everybody gets on the same page. They're celebrating with their bodies, so to speak. But then the very next morning after all this, they're sacrificing animals, they're sacrificing people.
Yeah.
Like this is an honest depiction of what the Vikings were about and how they gained the gods' favor.
For sure.
Which was cool. Really hard to watch, but cool. But after that, it goes forward and just how they went from town to town, how they fought, sometimes how they had meetings with leaders so they would avoid the conflict, how the people in this new town would eat and watch these Vikings just scarf down food. Like everything was there. And it's a really, really cool show. And they have a Vikings Valhalla that just appeared on Netflix, and I need to check that out soon.
Yeah, I also have not finished Vikings, but I agree with everything you just said. I mean, it seems like Assassin's Creed Valhalla was mostly based on this show.
I would
with
agree.
how it lays out. I mean, the show really dives into the raids they would go on, and it really is as simple as them just like jumping into a church to steal the gold that was there.
Yeah.
Because difference in cultures, like that was it the Anglo-Saxons or no, I don't remember the name. The people they were raiding.
Yeah.
The Christians or whatever. But
Interesting thing about it is like there's so many different places where they have the statues of the gods or whatever, like huge art pieces of everything that they worship. But when it came down how they depicted it in the show, and this might actually be true, like how it actually was, when they like praised Odin, it's literally just a big rock with some markings and a rune on it. Like it didn't show like the man as a statue or whatever. It was just the runes on a rock, and that's what they worshipped.
okay.
And it's like maybe it meant that the Vikings weren't as artistic, but it's whatever. It's how they lived. It's how they decided what to do next. It's how they followed what they were called upon by the gods,
And I love how it tied into the whole hierarchy too. It's like a constant turmoil between who wants to be leader and like trying to pull strings to make it happen and all that stuff.
I definitely have to finish the show for sure.
Me as well. Another one for the TV side. This one's actually an anime. I only watched the first episode, but Vinland Saga.
Great series.
I have to watch that one.
So, have you actually seen the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I only watched one episode so far, but it was definitely interesting to see like Norse mythology done anime style.
It was done very well, honestly. It's depicting just strong characters. It's kind of like a history, more or less, because it's the idea of when Vikings traveled and they were fighting amongst themselves for territory and fighting amongst England.
Nice.
Okay.
Is it dive into the fantasy realm, or is it more like
More
realistic?
more realistic, honestly. It's
That's actually cool.
It's kind of a little bit like the Vikings series, but this is just an anime take for it.
So the gods are probably just mentioned and not
Yep.
really shown, right?
Yep.
I love that.
It's actually done very well. They are currently releasing its second season for it.
Nice.
The story itself just is taking place of a Viking warrior. He left the Vikings and kind of created his own village in Iceland.
Nice.
And he's trying to other people are trying to pull him back into fighting because he was such a great warrior.
Cool.
And they betray him, and then it follows his son.
Nice.
It's a really good story for how they tell it, and I really enjoyed the series.
What was the title one more time? I'm definitely gonna check it.
Vinland Saga.
Vinland Saga. Cool.
Also a Netflix original. I guess Netflix is the one that's making it.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to go back and watch it.
Do it. It's worth it.
I'm gonna dive into that.
TV wise, I don't think there's other shows that I'm aware of. I know Netflix had a couple that they did, but I don't think I really dived into them. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have other ones, maybe.
Not really.
Okay.
The Vikings itself TV show was basically the only one. I'm sure there's other TV shows that sort of like dip their toes in like the Norse mythology here and there, but it's nothing like that fully revolves around it.
Okay.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah. One kind of miscellaneous one for me, I'm a Magic the Gathering player.
Okay.
And they had a set not too long ago that was based on Vikings. Usually each set has like a cool theme. Like they did one for like a neon Japanese cyberpunk. It was called like Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And then
Nice.
they had the Viking one called Kaldheim, which drew in a lot of inspiration. You had cards like based on the gods and their weapons and stuff. So
Sick.
just a mention for me because I'm a nerd and I play Magic.
We're all nerds here.
Yeah. It is the Nerd Switch podcast.
Yes, it is.
But our last little section here before we dive into your project is just for the music. And Jeremiah, I know this one you probably don't really have anything for.
No, not really.
Well, that's okay. We're gonna tell you these cool bands. You can check them out. We'll make a fan of you yet, boy.
Cool.
Yeah, I have 7 bands listed.
I was looking through it, and I know 2 of them, and I can talk about a few of them. For
Okay.
Sure.
Did you have others that I did not list?
Not that I can think of. Those 2 names down there were the only ones that I've listened to.
Okay.
And would recognize.
Sounds good. So we'll just work through this list. This one I know you do know is Skald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're a more traditional music group, like a lot of, drums and the string instruments, but they sound really good.
Yeah.
They even did a couple covers that were pretty good. I don't know if you listen to them. They did like the 7 Nation Army.
Oh, nice. Sick.
Which really cool to hear with like Viking chants, but yeah. Obviously we're a podcast. We can't really play the music for you, or we'll probably get in trouble.
Right. you know.
Yeah, but they're called Skald. They're really good if you like traditional music. They do a lot of fun stuff with drums. I'm definitely, as a music fan, more in on like the heavy metal side.
Fair.
So my bands mostly check those boxes. Like the next one is one that's been a group for a pretty long time with Amon Amarth. I don't know if you've ever heard them.
Interesting.
But they do a lot of Viking-based heavy metal.
Nice.
One song in particular is like called "Destroyer of the Universe," which is just about Surtur destroying Asgard.
Oh my god!
It's like the most heavy metal thing you've ever heard.
It's incredible. I'm totally gonna pull that one up on the way home.
Yeah, but they've done a lot of good ones, and it just depends on your music taste. Some people don't like big burly men just screaming into your ears for a few minutes, but
and for others, it's everything.
Yeah. One of my favorite bands, based in Iceland, is Skálmold, and they're not as heavy metal, They do kind of mixed vocals, and they do some really cool stuff with like group vocals when they all sing together. It sounds really cool.
Nice.
These guys I was introduced to after listening to the band I'll talk about next, but they very quickly like became one of my favorite bands, and they actually did a live concert with the Icelandic Symphony, which the whole concert's on YouTube, but it is I've watched it like 4 times. It sounds so good.
Nice. Love that.
And then the first band I listened to, this was actually where a lot of the Viking stuff also took off for me, because I was originally listening to, what's it, the German band, what are they called? Oh man, Rammstein.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to Rammstein, and then Spotify suggested a song from a group called Heidvolk, and they're a German Viking-inspired band. But that's where it started to take off for me because I really liked the music. And then it wound up, like, I'd be playing For Honor and I'd just be listening to, like, Heidvolk, Skalmodin, Amon Amarth while I'm running around as a Viking.
Nice.
You're such a nerd.
I know. And then there's the rest of the ones on this list are more traditional based. One group called Danheim, which I think most of their music is kind of, like, synthetically made. I don't know if...
Yeah.
It sounds like audio mixing, but it's like really good.
Yeah.
So they're really good. They just do a lot of stuff again with vocals, stringed instruments, and drums. Another group that's very similar is Wardruna.
That one I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
I listened to that one a lot.
Wardruna did music for Valhalla, or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, didn't they?
They got music credit for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And they recently... released an album recently, and I mean like in the last year, where that album was in the #1 on iTunes for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
So they are a big, huge group, and they're doing like a live tour. They've been doing a live tour like the last year and a half, and I want to go so bad. But it's mostly just through Europe that they're touring through right now.
Oh, okay.
But.
And then the last group, and this one's pretty weird. They're called Heilung.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Have you ever heard of them?
I haven't. I have to check that one out.
Okay, yeah. They're what it labels them as is an experimental folk music band made up of members from Denmark, Norway, and Germany. And they also do a lot of live shows, and you can find them on YouTube. But the vocalist in this group, she sounds just incredible, and she can do some really good stuff with her voice, while you also have the other vocalist who's doing the more traditional, like, throat singing.
Chanting and stuff like that.
Really good with their instruments. I highly recommend checking out one of their live performances. I would love to go see them live.
Yeah.
But, there's a bit of a barrier with location.
Right.
Get a passport.
Get a passport, man. It's that simple.
Yeah, but that, I think, pretty much wraps up the music. So yeah, Jeremiah, check them out. Become a fan.
if anything,
just post some of the songs on our Discord. And maybe click on them.
Okay. Sorry, what were you saying, Zach?
If anything, just Wardruna is a good one to start with, because it's not as heavy as a lot of the other ones are. So if you're not into the heaviest of music, Wardruna is like, it's calmer, it's got nature-based stuff in a lot of the music, and the drums are nice and easy. And honestly, it's been my workout music a lot.
Okay.
Just like doing sit-ups to someone chanting,
Yeah.
and it's not too overwhelming. Like, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, they too, like, some of their songs are pretty mellow, and some of their songs just, like, slap.
Yeah, they go. There's this
definitely.
one called, I think, Gra, and they go super hard with that one, and they have, like, female singers doing, like, this witch type chanting through it, and it's hardcore, dude. I love it.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and jump on to talking about kind of what you've been working on. I know it's a work in progress, and you're at liberty to tell us whatever you are allowed to and or want to tell us about it. But
Cool. So this project I've been doing is, we named it Valhalla, but we named this like 2 or 3 years ago. So it kind of started where a cousin of mine passed away.
okay.
But like three years ago or so. And I was like really trying to go through grief and everything, but a friend of mine started pitching me. He wanted to, when I told him the news, because he was actually friends with my cousin as well. When I told him the news, his first instinct was just to start pitching me ideas because he knew I was a filmmaker. We've worked on films before.
Yeah.
He's actually the guy who played the priest in that Wrath movie that I made with the dragon.
Okay.
So he was the one in like the priest gown and stuff.
Gotcha.
And priest robe. But he started pitching me this idea about a Viking and his daughter and some giants.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, what can we do with that, you know? And elements started coming in to where there's a doll involved, to where, and various other things. I'll try not to spoil too much of the story. It's going to be a short film, so it's not anything too huge. But we just barely finished our campaign for it, and it was successful. We raised a little over $3,500, so we're going to be able to make this film, even though it's incredibly low budget still.
Yeah.
But the whole aspect of it is that it's driving what makes a man, like what makes this Viking go out and seek these giants to want to kill them. But the soul of the movie is his daughter, and the Viking name is Njal, and the daughter's name is Yrsa. We wanted to think of like cool Viking names, and those are the ones that landed. But the Viking, they start the movie off where their entire village gets slaughtered by these giants, and just those two have to run away and escape.
Okay.
Because obviously, him being a Viking, he would stay and fight until his very last breath. But he has his daughter, who he wants to keep alive, you know, and they're on the run, and he tries to like train and also distract his daughter from them also still being followed by these giants this entire movie.
Right.
So it's a Viking father, so it's not technically, it's not a father babying his child. It's training this child and to be ready for Valhalla, because that's what that's the title is. That is literally him guiding her to be ready for Valhalla.
Right. Think back to like God of War and that relationship between Kratos and Atreus.
Right. Exactly. And there's a lot of inspiration from that I borrowed, but it's different because Kratos and Atreus were gods, and these two are just people, human beings. Where one hit from a club from one of these giants, they're dead, they're gone. And with the daughter, like they also lost their mother in the village raid, and there's a conversation when they're around the fire, when he's telling her about the story of giants and the story about Valhalla and how you get in there, to where she asks, did mother make it to Valhalla? And she didn't die fighting because it was a surprise attack. She was just kind of cut down, which means that she goes to hell.
Yeah.
And that's the rules of it all, you know? And so there's a lot of emotional weight to the story. But our little actress, Sophia, does so well at just being able to just click and just be in the scene. And one of the reasons that we're waiting to film is because she has braces on. And we have to wait for her to get her braces off at the end of the year. But we're just like I'm asking my team, Vikings had braces, right? And they're like, no, they did not. I'm just like, okay, cool, we'll wait until she has them off. But we have huge things planned for this project, especially with the fight scene between the Viking and the three giants. We have two giants cast already, and one is 6'7" and the other is 6'10". So they're big, huge guys that are ready to come in and just wreck shit, pretty much.
So, out of pure curiosity, I know it's like you mentioned, it's fairly low budget, so there's probably not too much you can do in terms of like SFX or anything, but when you're depicting giants, are these like giants in the sense, like, are you gonna like use tricks with the camera to kind of enhance that aspect, or how do you plan to kind of embody the giant factor?
Yeah, we'll have like little bits and pieces of the scene of them slaughtering the village, and that's where a lot of the camera tricks will come into play.
Okay.
But when it comes to the fight scene, it like it really limits what we can do camera trick wise. But we have our shot list laid out, and we're trying to do it in like 2 or 3 days for a shoot, and with that we would need like multiple cameras, so it gets tricky. But the story also depicts that also more inspiration coming from God of War. Just because their race is giant doesn't necessarily mean that they're huge giants.
Okay.
You know, and so, and one thing that was said in the script is that I think at one point is the lesser giants never forgave their Odin like slaughtering the big king giant to make Midgard or whatever.
Okay.
So it's we're depicting them as still giants, but just the lesser giants, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Because obviously we don't have the budget to make these guys 20 or 30 feet tall, you know, because that takes a lot of work. And of course, I'm taking inspiration from these camera tricks from the Lord of the Rings movies, how they did the Hobbit next to Gandalf and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just placing somebody like this,
Right.
distance, putting someone more in the background while someone else is standing close to the cameras, like stuff like that. You can easily do.
Okay.
But we're still trying to figure out when rehearsals are due. But the fight scene, we have it all written out. It is brutal, and I'm so excited to do it. And the whole thing, how it all comes together with the daughter and her fighting for Valhalla and everything like that. And it's cool. I'm super excited to make it, just because where it came from, both as like a personal experience and me being passionate about Norse mythology in general, and that the campaign was successful. So there are people in my inner circle of friends that actually believe in me to make this, which I'm super blessed to have that in my life. So yeah, I probably should make this movie. It's like embedded in my brain right now, but I'm super excited for it, and we're definitely doing that later this year, probably sometime after the summer.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds really exciting. I was keeping an eye on the campaign when that was going.
Yeah.
And it was close. I was a little nervous, but...
So was I. I was like, come on, man.
Just give me money.
It's just like 3 or 2 days. I'm like, come on, man. But my sister, Miranda, she's producing it, and she's really, really, really good at her job.
Okay. So your background, I know you've done other projects. I'm assuming a lot of what you went to school for maybe was revolved around film, or...
Yeah. So I went to music video and film school in California at Musicians Institute.
Okay.
It's a school right on Hollywood Boulevard, like just a few blocks away from the Chinese Theater. And they teach, obviously musicians there, but they have a small music video program, and I got a certificate there from like a year program. And after that, a few years later, I went to the Salt Lake Community College and did the film school there and got my associates from there.
Okay.
So I do have my training and education in that department, for sure.
Alrighty. Well, yeah, that sounds super exciting. As far as like expectations, when do you think it'll be available, and kind of, I don't know if you even have a plan yet for like where it's going to be available, but
we are hitting up film festivals first, before it's released anywhere.
Gotcha.
So that's anybody who donated at least $10 to the campaign gets a free link.
Okay.
So anybody who did that will get the chance to see it before it goes to film festivals. But once film festivals are done, then we'll discuss where it goes then. It could be on Vimeo, it could be on YouTube. But that'll be at least a year or two after film festivals. Because you never know. It could hit something. I'm not putting too many expectations out there, but it could hit Sundance. They have a short film program there. And they also have like the short film nominee at several award shows, you know? So, like, I'm keeping my expectations under control, but also know that all that is
A possibility.
possible.
Yeah.
And if this campaign is starting to be successful, if my heart and passion for the project is in it, with all the personal experience and weight coming into it, I feel like there's a shot.
Okay.
So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting. I hope it goes really well for you.
Yeah.
Film festival wise, I know you kind of have to gamble on whether or not it'll be accepted into the film festival, but
Right.
high hopes for you.
Yeah. My sister, she produced another film that was hers.
Uh-huh.
Oh God, she's gonna kill me for this. I can't remember the name of the movie. But she made, I think, like 4 or 5 film festivals with this movie. So
Okay.
she's done this before, and so she's laying out the maps of everything we have to do, all the paperwork, all the crap that I never really thought of when, you know, even though I've been educated on it, and just trying to avoid it because it's all awful work beforehand, you know. But she's got everything under control. She keeps me updated. She doesn't do all the work herself. She like tells me what I have to do, so I do it, which is good because I do need to dive in. But yeah, she's done the film festival thing before, so I have much more hopes with that aspect into it.
No, that's good to have someone that's versed in that progress or process.
Yeah, both progress and process.
Okay, well, if anyone's interested in kind of following along with updates on the project, where would they want to look?
We have 2 we have some social media for Valhalla. We have a Instagram. We have a Facebook. Is there gonna be a description in this?
Yeah, we can throw a link in there.
We can throw in the trailer on YouTube, and it should have everything inside the description on that video.
Okay.
If that works for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, we'll share the trailer on there, and then
Sounds good.
you guys can check out everything through there.
Alrighty, well, yeah, that sounds super exciting.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
But
I'm actually pretty new to like the film producing like process to it. Like learning all this is actually really cool.
Yeah.
I've had a few friends in town that have done their own film producing. We have the Electric Theater here in St. George,
Right.
and they've done a few films produced, and they've shown them there.
Nice.
So that's actually really cool to get to actually meet someone who also gets to put in that kind of effort and work for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding.
I told Jeremiah, because we worked together forever ago. I think he just barely missed that window.
Yeah, I don't think I got to meet you at the theater.
I left right before then. Yeah, I remember.
But yeah, super exciting. Definitely something to look forward to. If we'll wrap up here, but if you did make it to this point in the episode, I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us today. If you want to follow us on social media, we are on Instagram as well as Twitter. If you check the description on this podcast, we will also post a link to Zach's upcoming film project if you want to check that out. And then with that, we just, again, thank you guys for listening, and hopefully we will catch you in the next episode.
Yay! Thank you!
Axes.
Thor's hammer.